Georgia's coming to take your soul. That's another quote from Bruce Feldman's piece in The Athletic. Very interesting. I'm going to try to link it down below so you can take a look at it. But uh, that article has gotten a lot of play this week. That's something he was talking about today on Paul Feinbaum. And, when you talk with coaches around the SEC or in college football, and they talk off the record, they can really be a very descriptive bunch. And when I talk with folks not at Georgia who are in the SEC, they have a lot of very positive things to say about Georgia, even coming into this season. I don't know that it's getting overdone with Georgia's defense right now, but um, there's I think they deserve what they're getting. I mean, this is ridiculous that they're allowing 6.6 points a game. They could lower that over the next four games. But when you talk with assistants, um, that doesn't have to just be assistants. But when you talk with the coaches around the league, the biggest thing that they say is that Georgia's, I don't want to say simplification, but there are a few things that are helping Kirby and them get to where they got to go. Number one, the recruiting, certainly. The identification of talent and the pursuit of it during recruiting is the most important thing. This has been something I've discussed for a long, long time. People wanted to blame Mark Richt for failures in coaching. I said, well, he just doesn't have the players. That's the issue. It's not the coaching, it's the recruiting. Secondly, the development of talent over time happens because younger players, as of late for sure, don't play, so they learn along the way, and then by the time they are supposed to play on the field, they know exactly what they're supposed to be doing, which gets back to the final thing, which is continuity. So, um, guys like Adam Anderson, Quay Walker, Channing Tindall, when they weren't playing, when they were younger, they were totally, being focused towards the time that they would focus. The terminology was similar. The biggest thing that when you talk with folks around the league and just in college football is that the Georgia players on defense, particularly, know exactly what they're supposed to be doing. Exactly. It's simple. I keep saying simplified. That's probably not the best way to do it. But I can tell you, as a former college athlete, it is totally overwhelming at the beginning of your time when you're trying to learn plays and concepts and you know the terms, because what you're doing in college is not necessarily at all, actually it's not at all like what you're doing in high school. It's simplified for sure. um, you know we ran we didn't run plays where I went to high school. It was more advanced than that, but we didn't have sets. We didn't have you know this uh, variable off of this set. We didn't do that. In college, you're not just going to have sets. You're going to have variables upon variables. I mean, if this, then this. So that's what takes so long. And on the defensive side of the ball for the Dogs, things are boiled down. The players are allowed to play fast. And like we've been hearing this week from this article and other stuff, I mean, it's not just Bruce's story. uh, you know, but they're trying to take your soul. Georgia's defense trying to rip your head off. I hear that stuff in the off season all the time. You're talking to one person whose focus around the league is more in recruiting than anything. I talked to him in the run up to the spring, just after Georgia's win over Cincinnati, and his point was, oh no, they're going to be back. Georgia's two-loss season. Yeah, it wasn't good for Georgia, but this they're not going anywhere. Like, in fact, they're going to be back in a minute. Like, it's not going to take any sort of time. So a lot of people did see this coming. Bill Conley at ESPN, a big betting guy with analytics and so forth, talking about Georgia, his focus of the offseason a lot of time was on the offensive side of the ball. How much better could they be with JT Daniels? But it's starting to look like this defense is going to be the thing that's going to power Georgia to the conference championship and beyond. Um, after the Clemson game, we're sitting there in the press conference, and oops, nothing's live anymore, unfortunately. But Kirby says, "I don't see why you can't use defense, a dominant defense, to win the national championship. I don't see why. We're gonna see because this defense, no matter what Georgia's offense does, it's too late now. This team has been defined by a defense that's not allowed 14 points in any game this season. I mean, really good defenses allow points. When you look back at the Alabama team in 2011, that team, and we were talking about how the LSU Alabama game in 2011 in Tuscaloosa was the greatest game of all time. Well, nobody scored 10 points. Now are we really having that conversation? It was not the greatest game. It was miserable to watch. But that Bama team only allowed 14 once, and that was over Georgia Southern. And I remember Nick Saban being pissed after that game. You know, I, I, if Georgia allowed over 20 from here on out in the regular season, I'd be a little surprised. I think Tennessee can score. I would be stunned if anybody else scored more than 2 touchdowns. I just don't. They're too dialed in. So it's not surprising. It's not surprising that they're so good. I don't want to be the guy that overdoes it. A lot of times, like Jordan Davis is not winning the Heisman, and it's a great story. I loved. I know David Hill personally at ESPN. He's that's a good story. It's just not going to happen. I say that as a Heisman voter. I mean, I just don't see how there's going to be enough momentum outside of Jordan getting handoffs and catching balls coming out of the backfield on offense. I just don't see that happening. So we're too kind of late in the ball game for that. I think. Well, no, we're not too late in the ball game. We're too late in the ball game for the offense at Georgia to take over the identity of this team. I don't think we're too late for the Heisman for anybody. There's no one great player in college football this season. So that started coming out of my mouth, but I'm skeptical that Jordan would be a guy that would win the Heisman. Be in New York, now that's a different story. But these great defenses, you know, for all of our lifetime in sports, we've been told, offense sells tickets, defense wins championship. But in the last certainly 5 years, but it's probably been creeping this way for the last 10, you really had to score. And you look at, it started really at Auburn in 2010, but it kind of regressed a touch with Alabama's not so little, but their run in 11, 12. They weren't really scoring. It was their defense. I mean, that 11 defense allowed 7, 11, 0, 14, 10, 0, 7, 6, 9, 7, 21, 24. I mean, 20, 14, and then 0. I mean, they won a national championship game with a shutout. Is it possible Georgia can win the national championship game if they get there with a shutout? And then in 12, here's Alabama again with 14, 0, 0, 7, 14, 10, 13, 7, 17, 29 to Johnny Manziel and A&M. Then they didn't allow a point for 2 weeks. 0, 0, and then they played the Dogs, who scored 28, which was just not quite enough, as we all know, Alabama going on to win the national championship. But Georgia's defense is trying to snuff you out. I mean, they're trying to end you, and they're trying to do so in a very quick way. I mean, when you saw what happened at the end of the first half at Florida, there was no time at which I thought Florida would win that game. I did wonder how long it would take for Georgia to win. I've never seen a team explode on defense. They exploded on defense and won the game. And I think because it's different or new, because people can't understand it, they frown on it, I guess, or whatever you want to call it. People don't like something or don't understand it. They poo-poo it. But this defense can change, not just change the game, they can explode on you. They can They can do pick sixes. How many pick sixes has this team had? The one against Clemson won that game. The one against the Gators ended that game. I mean, if the 10-0 lead didn't end it, certainly when they got 24-0, it ended it. But Georgia was the better team against Florida and used the defense to explode on them. That didn't happen against Auburn, but and allowed Auburn to kind of hang around in the game. But Missouri is going to have no real chance to win Saturday. But let's just see how quickly Georgia jumps all over Mizzou. It is one of the, I want to talk about this later in the week. It's not going to be a video that a lot of people are going to be like, oh, wow. But I'm going to talk about the Mizzou game out there this past year in the near future. So stay on the lookout for that, because that was one of the most bizarre games and situations I've been to. A lot of the pandemic games were strange, but the Mizzou game really was the weirdest. So stay on the lookout for that. We'll see you over on the website, dogpost.com.